All righty, everybody. Thank you for joining me. Welcome to Modern Sales Pros Revenue Excellence Summit, where we're studying the art of modern sales. Today, I am joined by an absolutely killer panel where we're going to be talking about structuring your revenue operations for 2025, basically looking at current state, the future, giving you the tools you need to be prepped for where we're going. And so I'm James MacArthur. I'm the head of revenue operations at New, and we are a Salesforce native quote to cash solution. Sure you'll hear more about it eventually in your lives, but if you want to ever talk, I'm here. And I'm joined by the awesome panelists. Let's start with David.
Hey, James, thanks so much for having me on this fantastic panel. My name is David Zwer, and I go by DZ. I am the VP of Revenue Operations at Design Pickle, and we are a design services firm based out of Arizona.
Awesome. And Brooke.
Hi, I'm Brooke Tressiter. I'm the VP of Revenue Operations at Coach Hub. We do coaching, executive and individual manager coaching. We are based in Berlin, and I am based in London.
So it is an early day for you.
No, it's a late day. 8:30 p.m. Yeah.
And last but certainly not least, Alex.
Hey everyone, I'm Alex Miller. I lead the revenue operations team here at Medallion. At Medallion, we help healthcare organizations with licensing and credentialing of their positions. For us lay people, you can think of it like background checks for doctors, which is a pretty critical part of how the whole U.S. healthcare system works. So, and a lot of how the money flows through it too. So I've been here about a year and a half and previously at Lux and Sendoso before being here. Glad to be here.
Awesome. Excited to have you all. And so kicking us off, I think no RevOps panel actually works unless we start off asking like, hey, what is your current state of RevOps and where are you sitting in your org? I'll start with Brooke.
So I report directly to our CRO, and nearly every job I've had, I've always reported to the CRO. My last company, we did a bit of a reorg and a bit of a rebrand to business operations, where I rolled up to the COO because we were doing a lot of the end-to-end go-to-market operations. My current role is very similar and it covers all of go-to-market operations, but because we're very revenue aligned, we sit under the CRO, or I report directly to CRO.
Awesome. And kind of when you think about the current state within your company, where do you feel like you are in your RevOps journey there?
Well, I've just joined and the company's been around 7 years. So we are in a bit of a re-architect stage in that we have a lot of stuff that was built, but it was done very hastily about 2 years ago when we did a migration. And we don't have a lot of clear data today. So I am trying to close out FY24 and also do a re-data architecture to launch by January of next year. So we're in the process of doing new sales stages and forecast categories and really clear entry and exit criteria and aligning our sales stages to MedPick.
So you are getting to do RevOps in its purest form of just like discovery and build, discovery and architecture.
I don't know if
that's awesome.
It's putting out fires while, rebuilding the plane while you're flying it is how I would equate it to my team. It's a lot. It's a lot of fun. I have a team of people in London, Paris, and Berlin. So we spend a lot of time on calls right now, working on planning for how we're going to get us bigger and better and faster next year.
That's awesome. And Alex, same question. Like, what are you thinking about your current state in this RevOps journey we're all on, and where are you currently sitting?
Yeah, great question. So I think over time, I've reported into finance a handful of times, reported into sales. Today, reported into sales actually within Medallion. I've reported to finance, then sales. So what's kind of fun about that, though, is like despite rolling up into different departments, like the roles never changed. It's always been, we're still supporting the same audience, we're still supporting the same teams, we're still driving the same processes. And it's never really changed, which I think is fun. And it's also like a strong, I don't know, like point of pride, honestly, to say like, hey, doesn't matter who we report to, like we know what the job is and we're going to do it. Medallion's a young company. We've been around for less than 4 years. So we're in a lot of like, I wouldn't say we're in like the true, like Brooke said, like early stage stuff. I've been here for 1.5 years. That was a lot of what I worked on when I first got here. So most of what we're doing is still kind of in 0 to 1 territory, if not like 1.5 territory. But more of the active work we're doing on today is just looking back at what we did in the last year and saying, hey, is that going to scale in the next year? It's like, hey, okay, we got the foundation built, but like, does the second floor collapse when we put the first floor on top of it? So it's a fun time. I think we're still kind of in like everybody's generalist mode. We're starting to get a little bit more specialized. I'm sure we'll talk more about that today. But RevOps has been, again, like that nervous tissue across our GTM team since day one, at least. So it's been good. It hasn't been easy, but it's been fun.
Yeah, it sounds like it's exactly at that start, stop, continue point where you're sitting there and you're analyzing everything like, hey, what's going to knock the foundation out versus what can we build upon on the next layer?
Yeah.
That's awesome. David, what about you?
Yeah, I think similar to Alex and to Brooke, I've always sat in kind of a sales org, but today we're actually revenue operations reports up into finance. But our kind of ecosystem of who we support is still the same. So my peers are obviously sales, customer success, product. And so it's a real tight partnership. The company's 10 years old, so there's kind of been different variations of like how revenue operations has driven impact. And I think, what's been, I think, very important for us as a revenue operations team, kind of the state of like what we're doing. When we look kind of like in our competitor peer set, like we're really the only ones that kind of have this model in our go-to-market motion, which is actually a huge competitive advantage for us in terms of like how we think about like our go-to-market, the different work streams, right? And how we can kind of innovate and do other things in a more agile way, right? So we already have the data structure that's in place, and it really kind of helps drive, some of those strategic decisions out there. So we've built a great foundation.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's always good. It sounds like we've got starting from the beginning, building up everything. We've got the coming in the middle, breaking it all down and putting it back together. And then we've got everything like the already established and building from there place. And that's honestly a great panel. Me personally, I'm more in the Alex category than the other ones at the current state and time, but I've been all the other sides, but it's really good to be, this is a great mix of a panel. I'm really excited for this. So kind of jumping in to the next stage, Alex, we're talking about running your RevOps team. Like, what does that operating rhythm look like? How's it organized? How do you plan? Like, what do you got going on there from like, how are you measuring yourself?
Yeah, I love this question. So over FY24, orgs changed a bit within at least RevOps. I think we started off kind of with 2 people that then quickly became 3 and then quickly became 4. I'd say the 4th person joined about halfway through the year. So we're really settling into operating within a strong pod within ourselves. We're kind of all generalists. We have a Salesforce admin. We have myself as a leader. We have someone who kind of looks after data. We have someone who, has kind of come aboard as more of a systems manager. So it's kind of been a fun learning experience to figure out like how best we work with each other. It hasn't been easy, I'll be honest, because a lot of it's like a new person joins and it's like, okay, well, what am I going to stop doing? Versus what are the new things that this person now is going to own fully. So it's been, there's been some teething pains along the way, but I think one of the things that I pride myself in, at least within our team, is like we do keep a really strong operating rhythm. I had a chance a couple of roles ago, every new hire who touched systems got to go through Scrum Master training. So not that it's exactly the same way we run things here, but like we think through sprints, we keep a backlog, we have a brand new intake process we're actually rolling out right now. That was, we're kind of evolving from saying, hey, just throw everything in a Slack channel or DM me to saying, nope, this has to come through a structured process so that we can measure it, hold ourselves accountable. Within the week, though, like I said, we're kind of establishing new swim lanes within our team, which has been, again, like not the easiest thing. But, fast forward a couple months and it's actually become more of our superpower. Within our weekly cadence, like one thing I like to do is at the beginning of the week, we kind of sit down and say, hey, here's the sprint plan. This is what we got to get done. This is where it goes. This is what's small, medium, large, extra large. I like to hold my team accountable for like keeping me honest on that. Like they're like, Alex, this is there's no way we're gonna get this done this week. Like that's their opportunity to speak up. I think we kind of convene that meeting on Monday morning saying, all right, let's go get it. And then throughout the week, like regular check-ins, I think there's a lot of, there's the fires that come within these types of roles that you're obviously trying to battle between like working on the backlog or the sprint plan from this week or breaking something and having to go fix it and those types of things as well. But one of my favorite parts about our weekly operating rhythm is every Friday, like midday, we all pull up and we just talk about what we got done that week. Like what were our wins, what were highlights, lowlights. In Medallion, we're a remote company too. So like within our RevOps team, sometimes it's like you can feel like you're a team, but otherwise you can feel like you're on an island with each other, or without each other. And everyone's trying to march their own rhythm. So we like to celebrate our wins. We make sure those are known, not just within our team, but outside of our team. And, we like to do some fun stuff. Like, we don't convene that meeting without saying, all right, well, what's everyone got going on this weekend and things like that. But within the week, it's a lot of myself liaising with our head of marketing, head of sales, head of CS, head of finance, just to make sure that, again, like we're planning ahead and seeing around the corner for that stuff that we think will come in that would disrupt us. But again, like this is all, we're still learning. I think, like I said, this is a system that's kind of worked for us today. I'm really excited to see if this is actually going to scale into the next year with more AEs coming on board, more account managers coming on board, more everything. And but that's the fun, I guess, of being at our stage.
Yeah, it sounds like you're very much at the same kind of, you're just right before where you are from a RevOps function in the team function, which is you're building it out, you're building the swim lanes, you're seeing, and you're getting to the point where you can start going, do the start, stop, continue from a team standpoint and really building that machine. That's awesome. That's a fun place.
It's been easy, but yeah, it's been good.
And David, same question to you. Like, what is the operating rhythm at Design Pickle look like?
Yeah, I mean, very similar to what Alex shared. I was almost thinking about, wow, it's like you almost described what we do. But for our operating rhythm, we do have a little bit more of like we chunk it up into like our top strategic OKRs that we actually are focused on. And then we have a lot of the tactical things that are actually kind of coming in ad hoc, right? As as you progress in a quarter, revenue operations is obviously catching all of the wonderful kind of asks that come from the different parts of the business to say, hey, listen, we've got a priority that's getting kind of spun up. We're going to try something. We're going to, another bet. So how do we kind of think about executing against that? So we really focus on the strategic aspects of our business, every week. I do love kind of like at the end of the week, kind of what you were describing, Alex. We have the same type of thing where we actually talk about what were our key wins that we, each one of us had. We do that in Slack, and then we actually have what we're actually focused on for next week. So it really keeps us all accountable. So we have, quite a few folks that obviously are on the team, but we can summarize that and just see where are we getting kind of knocked off our skis from week to week in terms of shifting priorities and whatnot. But again, our cadence with the rest of the organization and our stakeholders is we have, obviously our set weekly meetings in terms of like building that cadence and making sure that we're taking notes. And hitting, obviously, all of the objectives that we talked about in the previous week. We're following up that, that week. So we're actually able to execute and execute quickly, right? And I think that's what, revenue operations teams is really kind of that trusted partner that we're trying to do or trying to build with the rest of the organization.
Yeah, so balancing the requirements gathering with the design, with the actual execution side to build more of that cadence with the business, as it were.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's great. And Brooke, how about you? What does this look like when you're breaking it all down and putting it back together again?
Yeah. So when I joined Coach Hub as it's a team of 25 people, and I think I had 14 direct reports. So not the most not the most time efficient for me. I spend a lot of time in meetings, but what I'm currently in the process of doing is defining 6 discrete functions within the revenue operations org. So I have a tender management, proposal management team that rolls up to me. I've got a go-to-market analytics and data team that does a lot of our data modeling, our forecasting, our quota modeling, our book of business, territories, all the insights, all our QBRs, all our board decks. And they're doing a great job. I inherited them. I have a comp team that we're in the process of getting through Q4. What are we commissions for Q4, and then designing new comp plans for next year. I have a sales enablement and revenue productivity team. So that team is, they're in charge of onboarding our sales reps, but also identifying where there's opportunities to improve within the broader commercial organization. Today, under our CRO is about 2/3 of the company. So it's customer support, customer success, all the standard sales functions. So we support a large part of the organization. And in revenue productivity, there are things like we have people who are designated as the product ops person or the legal ops person or finance ops, who are really partnered with our other business partners throughout the organization, and how do we operationalize and improve things there. We have a big strategic project next year, which is around customer journey. So how do we align our processes and systems to optimize a better experience for our customers? So we are in the early stages of kicking that off. So I have one of my project managers in revenue productivity who owns this, and we are setting up, we have a Slack channel and we have stakeholders, and now we're getting ready to launch for next year. And then in tandem with the people team, we're also focused on employee journey. So that's one of our other big strategic projects next year. And that is to really ensure that when we onboard someone into the revenue organization, they're set up for success. They know what success looks like. We onboard them quickly, and how can we shorten the time to revenue? So getting them as productive as possible. And then my last group is the sales systems team, which is a team of 4, which today is focused around not only the infrastructure of Salesforce, but all the integrations and the data structure around that. We're getting ready to make a bunch of data structure changes. So we're kind of, some cases, I just said, blow it up. Like, we know we're going to break some stuff. So there's some stuff we're trying to go delicate on, but today we've decided there's a couple changes we need to make very quickly, and we're going to blow some stuff up tomorrow on a Friday. So yeah, that's for me. That's the 6 discrete functions I have. The cadence for us is we have a team meeting every other week with the whole 25 people. I'm working to move towards a 1 week is with my directs, so my RevOps leaders, and then the other week is with the whole org. So cascading down to my leaders who can cascade down, and then the other week is a full RevOps all hands. And then I have our CRL holds a leader meeting every Monday with updates from her that she's cascading down, and then my team meeting is on Wednesday with my RevOps leaders and my team. So I am maniacal about less meetings, so I'm trying to figure out the best way to cascade down information. How do we do it asynchronously versus in a meeting? I don't know what that secret sweet spot is, but every time someone puts a meeting on my calendar from my team, I do say, like, do we need this as a meeting? But right now we have a lot of working meetings, and we're all remote as well. So there's a lot of Zoom calls for us as we're working a plan for next year.
1, RIP your Monday.
Yeah.
Because that's going to be fun. 2, that sounds like it's a really fun stage. Like you're basically doing the swim lane piece and trying to define where your team, because while you have all of this very well defined, you've got 14 direct reports, which is objectively too many. Yeah. And so it sounds like you've got, like, it's still like all of the plates spinning.
Yeah.
And you've probably got 7 or 8 hands there spinning the plates. Sounds fun. Awesome. Well, I have an off the cuff question, unplanned, because I feel like this is off the cuff of Brooke and some of the other comments. I feel like this is a necessary question, which is, and this is quick, which is, do you have a customer journey map? Are you working on one? Do you have a roadmap of the work you're doing? And where do you see that going? Or is this something that you feel is necessary for running a RevOps organization at scale? And I'll start with David.
Oh man, the off the cuff question, huh? I get the first crack at it. So a customer journey map, we don't quite have that fleshed out just because of the way that our customer journey actually, we have people who stay for a month. We also have people, because we're on a monthly business. So it's a little different in terms of like how the plan is. Now, from a revenue operations standpoint, that was one of the things that, when I joined, I'm like, oh my God, almost 8 months ago. It kind of like goes quick, right? The time when you join a new organization.
Yeah.
It was one of the things that I think that we didn't quite have was like what is like our North Star, right? And I think that revenue operations really has to kind of come in to kind of help drive that kind of vision in terms of like where are we going, and also not only are you bringing your team, but you're also helping kind of the partnership of like, here are the things that I definitely need to have in order to be true to kind of really guide the business in a way that I think aligns to the growth of all your KPIs as a business in terms of your AOP plan. So I think I got those two questions right. So I got what's our customer map, and then what's our revenue operations roadmap look like. All right.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I love the aligning to the North Star. And you'd mentioned OKRs previously. So it sounds like you're fully aligning all of your work to the business and really setting your team up for success with that visibility and the North Star kind of always there.
And the stakeholders, right? So they want to know like what are our key projects, and you want to give them visibility into that too. So like, we use systems like, obviously we're using Jira. I don't know if it's obvious, but we use Jira, which is a very common tool for us RevOps people. But we've got project plans that are in there. We have all of the things kind of that's documented. So you want to make sure not only is your roadmap tied, but also like, your stakeholders can have comments. They can have visibility and provide comments, and really kind of help, give you feedback along the way.
Love that. And honestly, I was going to say, it's weird that you have Jira written across your forehead.
Oh, yeah. Well, I have a big forehead. It's pretty,
But Brooke, how about, where are you in your customer journey and road mapping cycle?
Yeah, so this has been the pain point for our CRO when she joined, and she joined in March. We actually presented to the board, and I presented to the ELT last week as far as what the framework is and what we're looking to accomplish. For us, there's big things around like sales playbook, renewal playbooks, really clear understanding of the sales stage. I think 10 years ago, we were all talking about a sales funnel. Now it's more of the bow tie model, right? Winning by design and the bow tie model. And, close one is just halfway or a third of the way into the journey. And then how do you, expand the bow tie? And so we are taking the framework that they have put together and then aligning it with how does that map with our sales stages and MedPick, and, what should we know at each sales stage? And what does it look like from a forecasting standpoint? And how do we optimize it so it's a great experience for our customers, and really clear roles and remit. So one of the things that has happened with us, and we've scaled really quickly, it's about 400 employees in 6 years. For us, there's a lot of things that have happened very ad hoc, right? And now we need to be really clear and conscious about like who owns what and how do we ensure clean handoff. I think we all know like any system is only as great as like you can be really good at your silo, but then when the handoffs happen is where a lot of times things break down. And so we're really focused on like how do we ensure, when does the CSM get involved in a deal? Like what size deals should CSMs be involved in? When should they get involved? How do we make sure the handoff is really seamless? How do we make sure the customers are ramping up and assigning coaches to the coachees how do we nominate who's going to get coaching? And then, so there's that program design that we do during the sales cycle and ensuring that's happening, and who's doing this. And we have behavioral scientists that get involved with how do we leverage coaching to improve behavior and that sort of thing. So we have a lot of the framework. The first thing was like every problem we could think of where the gaps are, and we just threw it down. We used Confluence, so we threw it down in there. And now we're chunking out like what has to be done, P0 sort of stuff, which is what we're working on right now. We too also use Jira. I'm more of a Monday.com person, to be honest, but Jira is what we all get when, the product team buys, we get Confluence or you get Notion and then you go down that route. So we're doing Jira and we have a bunch of Kanban boards for like our sales systems, but for customer journey, we're still kind of in the infancy of before we start breaking on into work streams. So I think that answered all the questions.
It does.
Yeah,
It very much does. That was great.
Right.
I mean, it sounds like, it's in line with everything else where it's like you're building, you're working through it, and it's this constant process of evaluation and reevaluation. But you do it all within the frameworks that work for the business, which unfortunately for you is Jira.
I would agree. I feel like in my mind, and I don't necessarily say this on every call we have, but the Friends episode where they're trying to get the couch up the stairs and it's like Ross is yelling like pivot, pivot. I feel like I'm just yelling every day in my mind. Every call is like, we're just trying to be as agile as possible. And some new problem comes in and it's like, okay, pivot, we got to go do this and then pivot. And then, we're trying to constantly, keep the lights on, keep things going. We're in Q4 and then also plan for a massive overhaul in January. So it's just a really relaxing time for me right now. Yeah.
Sounds lovely. Like my tie of a business system. Alex, how about you?
Yeah. Kind of like what Brooke said, a lot of this starts when you have a new leader coming aboard, particularly at the revenue side. So I guess I could say I have the luxury of starting at Medallion about a month after a VP of sales. So some of the first projects I worked on was like, put new sales stages in place. We call it our CEP or customer engagement process. And, a lot of that was, Medallion of 2023 was a much earlier stage than we're at today. And it was kind of like, we're going to be everything to everybody. So a lot of this year was saying we can't be everything to everybody. And more specifically to our business, we sell to hospitals and health systems, we sell to provider groups, we sell to digital health orgs, we sell to like insurance companies. So like we'd hire new reps and they'd come in and try to have different conversations with different personas. Like they did 4 meetings per day and they're like, I feel like I just got to have a boxing ring. I don't know who I'm talking to or what I'm even talking about. So much of this year has been focusing on getting like either more specialized within our teams and saying we're going to have teams that work with certain segments of our market, but at minimum, just like coming down and saying, we're going to run a consistent process internally. So a lot of the early days were, what's a qualified opportunity? The basic stuff there. How does that progress through our pipeline? How do we forecast those? I like to say like, that's the thing that never ends. As the businesses continue to evolve, it's like you get to one point, you're like, okay, it's kind of steady state, but then decay starts happening really fast as like the business continues to accelerate in whatever direction it's going next. But to kind of close out the whole customer journey, we probably spent a good half of this year, kind of a fun journey in our path is like we've had a customer success team that we transitioned to becoming an account management team. So a team that went from not doing any commercials at all and just running tight QBRs with their customers to running commercials with their customers. And that's like a whole different muscle to start implementing. And when you take a team that's like never done those before and saying, all right, now we're going to start running renewals, we're going to start forecasting, we're going to start doing everything that comes with, think of it like in the bow tie model, like the inverse of what comes in the first half of it. And like, that's been fun. It's been fun that, and that also started when we had a new customer success leader come aboard. So we're trying to merge them all together. Of course, like it's easier said than done. We have an analytics team involved too, to track like what happens in the product along that path kind of mesh with what's actually going on the commercial side. So, we think we know going into next year. I'm sure if you asked me this question at the end of Q1, I'd probably have a whole different answer for you. But it hasn't been an easy evolution, but I feel like looking back at the end of 2023, when I started the company where we are today, it's almost unrecognizable. And I think that's a lot of testament to the leaders and coming in and saying, hey, we've got a playbook, we're going to run this, hold everyone accountable to running it, and have RevOps supporting to make sure systems are aligned to that. There's a real process, we're measuring it, we're looking at it constantly. And ultimately, we know we have levers as part of those systems as well to say, hey, if something's not working right, this is how we can course correct. The second part of the question around like roadmap, how do we look forward? We're still evolving that. And I'll be honest, like it's hard in our situation right now to like probably look out more than like 1 or 2 months into the future. So if you can't, at least my opinion here is like, if you can't look that far into the future, the very least you can do is make sure you're hyper organized today. So at the beginning of each month, like I sit down with all of our functional leaders. So that's head of sales, head of marketing, head of customer success, head of finance, BDR leaders, all those types of folks, and we say, here's the RevOps priorities for each of your respective departments for this month. It's nice for like our head of marketing to see what we're working on with CS, because those are the types of things that in a vacuum, like different leaders don't know what RevOps is working on elsewhere. So that's been at least a good part to us. I think as we get into next year, I'm hoping to like stretch that further into the future, using a lot of the stuff that we're having in our intake system and looking at what's in the backlog and saying, here's all the things that we're going to start merging in. But yeah, I think a lot of maturation on the customer side. I think we've got a little bit of catching up probably to do on how we support that. But strong stuff.
Yeah, and I think that kind of got into where I was going to go next, which was around balancing business requirements and technical requirements, because I do think there's a lot there in the planning and execution of all of these things. But one of the things that is in every RevOps conversation I've ever been in, and everybody talks about all the time, everyone argues about Salesforce, HubSpot, this, that, is Zoom Info great? Is what other solutions? What is Clay anyway? So how much, and Brooke, I'm going to start with you this time. How much of RevOps should be centered around your tool stack? And then like, well, we'll dig into like which systems you're using and how you're managing them, but like how much should we actually be focusing on systems?
So I had a leader, a RevOps leader that I learned from, right? And we've probably all heard this. It's people, process, systems, right? So you need systems that are flexible enough to align with your people and your process. For me, that's always been Salesforce. I started as a Salesforce admin. Every org I've gone to has had Salesforce. At this point, I'm not going to go to an org using something other than Salesforce as a CRM. It's incredibly flexible, maybe too flexible, because we've all seen what you can do with great power comes great responsibility, that you can just create, a break-in monster of some sort. There are some tools that, we recently purchased Gong. There's some tools that I've used at previous companies that align very similar to what we want to accomplish. But, I've used 3 or 4 different forecasting tools. I'm not terribly tied to some of that stuff. I think your CRO, whatever they have the most, they're comfortable with. There's some other vendors that I always work with. I think like lead to account matching and lead routing. I'm a big fan of Traction Complete. Everything else, I'm not really that tied to. I think Service Cloud is great in Salesforce, but I don't think a small org should try to roll out Service Cloud, right? I get it. You could stand up Zendesk in a week and you get all the automations that you need out of the box, right? I mean, 9 times out of 10, I was like, you should use Zendesk. We use Zendesk. At some point, will we grow out of it and want really complex routing and, account matching and escalating cases based on customer status, that sort of thing? Maybe, but that's not where we are today. So I'm pretty flexible on most stuff other than like Salesforce is, I'm a big fan of for enrichment. They're expensive, but globally DNB is pretty darn good for enrichment. Prospecting, I spent most of my career in the US. Now I'm in Europe. It's very different. GDPR is different. So you can't really say there's a great prospecting tool. It's very region specific. And the last companies I was at, payments. So you want something very specific to payments. And now I'm back in SaaS and it's very different. So, I think a lot of that stuff is, you have to be adaptable. What I really appreciate and what modern sales pros has been for me is sort of this bat phone, which is like, how are other people doing things, right? And the comp tool I used 10 years ago is very different than the comp tool I would probably recommend now. Like new vendors come on the market, things change, your requirements change, like what you need in payments. And my last 2 orgs is very different from a comp perspective to like what we do in SaaS. And so it's hard to stay on top of everything, especially now that I'm not in Silicon Valley. It's easier when you're like living there because half the companies are from there. But, when I joined Coach Hub, I told all my team, I started sharing like resources of where I go for help online. And I told all of them, every one of you should join the MSP. It's a great way to understand what other people are doing globally. I'll go search whether it's CPQ or comp or whatever. And it's a great way to do a lot of research and figure out how other people are solving problems. And we all know buyers are now doing half the research before you even contact the vendor. So MSP is where I start. And then, we all have a great network of RevOps leaders that we have worked with or we trust. And I have a few mentors from prior jobs that I always am WhatsApping about, like, how are you solving this very complex problem? So again, I'd say like flexibility. I have a couple go-tos, flexibility, and then MSP.
Love that, and love community as the bat phone, MSP as the bat phone. I rely on community for almost everything I do, and from a systems perspective, I think the core I heard there was keep it simple. Keep it.
I don't know if I said that explicitly, but that's a very good summary. I should have started out with that. Yes, less is better.
Like if I were to find the defining thread, it's like just like to a certain extent go with the flow, to a certain extent stand up for the tools you believe in, and to a certain extent build simply is where I heard that. And I think that's a good defining thing for me personally there. But Alex, what about you? Where do you stand on this kind of how much of RevOps should be centered around the tech stack, the systems we use, all of that?
Yeah, I'll just start by giving a shout out to my VP of Sales, Mike Weiner. I think like one of his pastimes over the weekend is buying new tools. I think within our tech stack, we've got, I say that as a compliment, of course, Mike, if you're out there. Within our team, we probably manage over 20 tools. It's a lot. And I think if you look at any one of we even have new hires doing, man, there's so many tools here. If you look at each individual tool in a vacuum, it's just like, hey, this is a thing that does this thing for us. Like people get lost. So I think so much of what we've been working on with our sales enablement team is like, how do these things all stitch together? Because no single tool is purchased to go solve revenue. It's like, it's a series of all these tools stitched together that makes this patchwork. And that's, some of the beauty and sometimes the curse, of course, of the Salesforce ecosystem is like, it has so many pieces that you can put into it. And kind of like Brooke said, it's like, you can take it in whatever direction you want. But yeah, I think within our team, again, over 20 tools, it's and a lot of it's new. Like I said, we haven't been around a long time. So all this stuff's more or less come aboard in the last 2 years. So we spent a lot of time over this year making sure that as we do implement new tools, that there's a clear strategy behind it. I'm a big fan of course, like baselining stuff before you bring a tool in so you can measure its efficacy once it's actually live, and making sure too that if it comes up for renewal time, you're like, hey, like we just didn't get, the output through this thing, then it's like, well, it's right for revisiting and shuffling that budget into something else. So I myself am like not a tool guy. I joke like I'm the most overpaid, underqualified Salesforce admin out there. So like I pass a lot of that stuff off to like Graham and Pranali within my team, because like that's what they are. They're like admins, business system folks. Like that's what they do well, which I think at least selfishly gives me a lot of time to like make sure. And I started my career out as a rep. I was a BDR right out of college. It's like I like to hope I could walk a day in the life of a seller and say, okay, like how would I as a seller like move my way through all these different systems, and what data comes from, where am I missing? And I think absent, of course, like doing that, like you'll end up with just like a bunch of shelfware that ultimately is a huge line item expense for any revenue org. And reps actually like it's diminishing return the more tools you keep adding to that stack. So hopefully as we get into next year, like we're not buying anything more and it's like, okay, it's time to go like take everything you bought in FY24 and put it to good use. But I'm sure we'll still keep buying stuff. But I think it's a perk, I guess, of being a young company. It's like we're always willing to take a shot at some new AI vendor. I'm sure I'm going to get a bunch of LinkedIn's after saying that. But the point being is like we're willing to try stuff new. And I think that that's something that I would hope, we never shy away from, because I think that's the beauty of being in like this next phase of AI is there's a lot of fun stuff going on out there.
You heard it here first. Pitch Alex immediately. No, I completely agree. Like that's a great approach and I love the fact that you're coming from the purely business side background, bringing in that expertise onto this side where it's like, and the holding people back from spending too much. I can't tell you how many times we've gone into negotiations and been like, hey, nobody's used this product. Literally, we bought it a year ago. Nobody's used it. Nobody's touched it. Let's throw it out. And that's a really smart approach. David, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, I think revenue operations, it's like a superpower, right? All of these technologies to kind of obviously make our systems work. But it also has to be tuned for the business. So, when you come into when you come into an organization, obviously the things that you've been most familiar with in the past, like sometimes just don't work in the business that you're currently in. So like Brooke, I was Salesforce all the way, and I actually landed in an organization where it's HubSpot. And I'm like, whoa, maybe that's, I kind of wanted the challenge, right? Even though I've like implemented 2 different HubSpot instances previously. So I felt pretty good about coming in and being able to kind of take it to the next level. But like there are some pleasant surprises, but I do tell our CEO all the time, like, hey, we're going to make a change. Are you ready for that? And it's always kind of a fun little joke that we get to have. But I do think that like there are so many tools that are out there right now. And that's like the thing that I think for us as revenue operations leaders that we have to really be thinking a lot about, like, so if we were to bring something on as a partner to, like, let's say a sales leader. So Alex, I have similar sales leader, Sebastian, props to him. We do buy new technology that requires us to kind of replace something else. So we're just creating more technical debt. And so change management and all the things that kind of come with kind of some of the new innovation that's happening in terms of like the reason why we're buying these new technologies, it's perceived to give us another kind of another efficiency, right, in the business, or another enrichment that we haven't been able to kind of cover through something else. So like we're always trying to solve a problem. And then I think, James, that was it's pretty hysterical. It's like you look back at the usage and you're like, a year has gone by and we haven't actually nobody's touched this when you look at the adoption. And so like that's the challenge as leaders that we're always facing, is that as we're in the front end of the buying cycle, it's like we need to challenge everybody to say, like, you have to use those things or these new technologies. Otherwise, it's just shelfware. And, as a RevOps team, we're managing something that's obviously that the value isn't really, it's not as what we thought it was. So super, it's always a great challenge to kind of go and face. But in today's market, like with AI, there's like this crazy ecosystem that's popped up for us. And so there's a ton of noise that's out there. But at the same time, there is value. You just have to kind of obviously figure out your use case for it.
Yeah, and that honestly, it's funny because we had a system that got disconnected from our Salesforce and nobody noticed. Like just the integration broke and nobody noticed, and I was just like, we'll leave it that way. Great. And so yeah, it's very interesting, that approach. I think that we have one more question, and I'm gonna like, we're gonna make this one quick because we got 2 more questions. We got like 5 to 10 minutes, maybe 5-ish minutes left. But first thing is there anything else quickly you'd like to add around how you're aligning MOPS, sales ops, CS ops? Brooke, you had talked about FinOps, legal ops. There are ops for everything. So was somebody called HR ops hops? I'm into it. Alex, what about you? Where are you starting here?
Yeah, I think prior roles, I'd say like more during the peak ZERP era, it was like easy, even at small companies, to say, we need a marketing ops person, we need a sales ops person, we need a sales ops person, put BDR ops in there somewhere too. We need a deal desk person. I think fast forward to today, and a lot of companies probably smartly like don't think that same way. So it's a matter of like, how do you find people that kind of blend some of those skill sets together? Within our own specific team, we've kind of divided into 2 pods. Again, we're just 4 people. We have like a data and strategy pod that looks after a lot of the stuff that's, say, not tooling, but that does intersect heavily across things like comp, deal desk, forecasting, that touches both sales, CS, pretty much anybody within a GTM org. The other side of that pod, of course, is systems and process. And their job is, of course, to say we look after one single tech stack that does unify all these different teams. So I'm sure that at some point as orgs scale, they do go back, and of course, likely so, to like more specialist roles. But I think as we look at it from an alignment perspective, like we try to make sure that, say, hey, if someone's on vacation for a week, that someone else within there, and it's not like your sales ops person goes on vacation for a week and all of a sudden you don't forecast that week. So we try to keep a generalist approach. I'm sure we won't stay that way forever, but I think today it's worked out great for us just because, again, everyone's kind of dangerous on a couple of different fronts.
Love that. David, you.
Yeah, I would just kind of answer this in a slightly different way, but like, for us, say we're generalists, but we are just a very, like, the way we've hired for the folks that we have today is that they can cover a lot of different things, and context shift, which I think from a revenue operations standpoint is super important. And again, we're small, but like, we deliver on things that, if there's a kind of a tight timeline and requests, we definitely try to turn things really quickly, and prioritize. And so if we need to kind of shift things to kind of get the alignment right, so it's like, hey, somebody from marketing needs this, this week because we're going to run an event. It does push other things off, and we have to communicate that. But like, that's unfortunately, that's kind of the reality of just being in a small team.
Love that. Brooke?
So because I mentioned I have quite a big size of team, and what had happened over this past 6 months is that the CS Ops team was a separate, distinct team and got moved into RevOps. So I have a couple of people who are very specific CS Ops who had been sitting in the CS Ops org. So it's great. They are on the CS leader calls every week. They're very dialed into what the CS team needs. And then we have a dedicated person within my org for marketing. So he's very aligned with the marketing leader and what they need. So I am really focused on less generalization and more specialization. 100% company, everyone's a generalist. By a 400-person company, you need to be a specialist, right? And I'm really focused on specialists, and I need experts. So whether it's my deal desk team or experts on deals, or in this case, like, we have a lot of back and forth between finance, and we were finding that it was within multiple different RevOps people and then multiple different sales people. And I just said, I need one person that owns the relationship with finance, where we can just be the single point of contact, right? So the person in my org that is managing finance, I call it finance ops, but it's really kind of the relationship with finance and the things that they need from the revenue org. And then, you will probably all hear of all of us that sit in the revenue org everywhere you've been, that there needs to be a tighter connection between revenue and product. So I've never been in a revenue org where they said it was amazing. So I have a person that now owns sort of what I'm calling product ops, which is, what does it look like to fully launch a product? What does the enablement look like on our side and the go-to-market ops? How do we ensure that when a product is launched from product side, that it actually is making it its way through the full journey? And so that person is also in charge of collating feedback from the entire org on feature requests and bugs and all that stuff, and helping us prioritize back to product. So I am at the size where I need specialists, and I need the terrible saying, which is one throat to choke, but I don't know what's a better idiom for that. I don't know. The Brits say a lot, we need to be singing from the same hymn sheet. So I've been saying that a lot, which is a very British term. Not necessarily applies to this use case, but I need specialists, and that's kind of where we're going with the size of org we are.
I always say one team, one dream, but that's.
I mean, that's so American. The Europeans I might get laughed at.
I'm also an Eagles fan, so fly Eagles fly. That's all I got to say. But but yeah, I love that approach where it's the decentralized strategy, centralized execution, where you're taking all the inputs from everyone and kind of funneling it down, processing it, and then pushing everything back out. That's awesome. Final circle, and this is a quick one sentence each, which is, what are you betting on for 2025? And we'll end where we started. David.
For us, it's outbound automation. How we can go to market, obviously, with a very smart approach to outbound.
Love that. Brooke.
So I was wondering if we'd all say the same thing, because I thought we were all going to say the same thing. For us in our org, it's AI. So we're looking at how we can streamline internally with AI, and we're also building AI into our products so that we can enable coaching for a much broader group of people. I feel like that's the word everyone's saying right now, but that is what we want to, we know it's coming. It's going to change the way we work. We need to be on top of how we can, leverage it. Our board is also saying AI, right? So, I mean, that's the, get ahead of it before it, you're the tidal wave that gets smashed by it. That's where we're focused.
Awesome. And Alex?
As a department, I'd say it's pipe gen. And I'd say within the RevOps team supporting that, newsflash, it's AI. I think we have challenges within our space. Just, we don't have a ZoomInfo or a Clearbit that can pipe a bunch of super niche healthcare specific data into our CRM to then drive on outbound engine work. So we're betting on AI tools like Clay, other just kind of bespoke stuff we're building internally to say, have these tools go do the research, bring it back to us instead of using traditional, data enrichment sources. So that's our big bet for this year.
That's awesome. And my big bet, I know I said it wasn't about me. My big bet is combining UserGem, Sendoso, and Clay to make my outbound engine. All right. Thank you all for coming. Thank you, everybody, for watching. This has been a lot of fun. It's been really delightful. And thank you, panel.
Thanks, James. Thanks, Brooke. Thanks, Alex.
This is great. Thanks, everyone.